Your boy making cold cuts, and I ain't talking about the sandwiches. Today's topic is discipline.
How our vision, how that word kind of molds us into who we are now and seeing where it's going to take us to.
Your ability to regulate yourself while you go from those 2 points.
Dibble and dabble, but the dabbling is a little bit more than dibbling.
When I find myself in a place where I'm like, I want to match this commitment, but I don't know who I can last minute trust to help me execute. Taking things from a theoretical space and connecting them practically, which is it's very much what you just did.
I know the podcast is called Getting Deep, but sometimes it ain't that deep.
It ain't that deep,
It's
man. You
not
gotta
that.
know the levels of your discipline and when is
Discipline
the
comes with that.
appropriate level.
Exactly. Discipline comes with that. Knowing when and where I can say something or how I say it, who it's to, how it's perceived. Like, do I have a relationship with this person where I can speak to them like that?
And I think that's where a lot of value comes from having these kind of conversations in this way of like understanding these things that drive us, whether we're talking about them or not, whether we're aware of them or not.
Some people are coming from an ill intent. Some are just like being nice, and it's just like how it's shared.
When I have kids, like, how do I teach them be like me without being fucked up like me? All right, man. Another episode. We back today. I got my close friend, my family, if you will, Zach Cross on with me today. What I've been doing in the past is, I'll give a light intro, but I'm gonna let you introduce yourself.
Okay.
I've kind of been doing this thing where I let you say why you think I might have asked you to be on, and then I'll tell you if it's different. I have been considering on whether or not I'm gonna keep doing it, but I think it's interesting. So,
But
how you want the world to know you, man, in case the world sees this?
what's up, world, man? My name is Zach Cross, born and raised in Portland, Oregon. Currently the marketing manager for the Golden State Warriors. Known Isaac for about 10 years now. We go way back. I feel like him and I might have met when we were younger because our families are even closer and go back further than what we know. So I'm sure you and I met at like a young age, but really kind of made our friendship in college and been rocking for like 10 years plus deep now. So it's family, it's gang, it's love. So happy to be on the podcast and looking forward to our conversation, bro.
That
Get it.
appreciate you coming on. Truly, I do because I know it's a bit last minute.
Hey, man.
So today's topic is discipline,
Mhm.
which is a word that has a lot of definitions. Why do you think I asked you on for this topic?
A good question. Man, probably the reason you asked me on for this topic is I feel like you and I have a similar grind, a similar mindset on our goals and our growth. And I feel like having that word discipline means a lot and it's seen in different ways for a variation of people. So I feel like my purpose and my vision of it might be different than yours, or yours might be different than our other friends. So kind of comparing how our vision, how that word kind of molds us into who we are now and seeing where it's going to take us to. So we just gonna see, we gonna chop it up, we gonna have some laughs, some deep conversation, some storytelling. Let's get it. Let's get it. Let's get it.
All right, say
Let's
less.
get it. Let's get it.
So let's dive right in. Let's start with an easy but a hard one of
All right.
how would you define discipline? Or what does that mean to you?
I would define discipline as one, being aware of what you want, two, being aware of where you're trying to go, and three, understanding what it takes to get to those points.
Mm,
I feel
bridge the
like
gap.
I feel like that gap right there is a pivotal section for people. because people always like, I think what I've learned from like school and corporate world is people are always like, what's your end goal, right? What's your end goal? And people always are like looking forward, obviously is good having an end goal, but like you can't obtain that end goal until you check box one, two, three, four, five, right? You can't skip over those milestones and baby steps or hiccups to achieve that one end goal. So discipline to me is just knowing what it takes, knowing what you're good at, what you're bad at, what your vices are, what you can dabble into a little bit, enough to like satisfy that craving, but not enough to derail what that goal is. So, and that's a challenge. I feel like a lot of people might dabble and stay in that area of a little bit of dabbling, right? And so it's just like having enough to feet wet and yeah, see it through. So that's to me. But on the opposite end, what does that mean to you? I feel like you have like maybe a whole new meaning for it, a whole different ideal or vision of what it could be.
No disrespect. I feel like that was a great answer. I'm actually surprised you get such a good answer. Not that you're being graded or anything, but I feel like that's that's very much how I would define it. I think that's an even better way than what I would have said because it's a simpler way of like there's so much in knowing what it takes to bridge those gaps. For me, I would define discipline as just like your ability to regulate yourself while you go from those 2 points. The space, the accuracy you can effectively move through that space is what I consider discipline. And like so some people, like you said, is like their goal of like how much they want to ensue in those vices versus what actually happens is a parameter or an indication of that level of discipline because life be life
Life is
it be
life.
life real fast real wild and
And you
so
can do about it either. It just hits you. You like, damn, all right,
eh,
figure it out, or what
or
we gonna do?
fold.
What we gonna do? What we gonna
And
do?
even then sometimes you think you're gonna fall and you got that bounce back in you and so I think I love this start because it's already far into where we want to go in terms of all the different aspects we can talk about this in, especially when I think about when I was like one, people who I could bring on who I felt like I already have a comfortability with to help me kind of get a better feel for what I'm trying to do here. I almost surprised myself in thinking of like discipline and having that conversation with you for a lot of the reasons that you just described of like I feel like on on paper
Mhm.
or like objectively from an outside view, it's like we seem so different, even from our backgrounds and like our family structures. But it's like there's so much overlap between us that I feel like, at least for me, I'm like when I met you, like it was not. You know me, like I'm like I don't warm up to people quick. Like, well, I do now. Like I've moved out of a lot of that, but like that's just not
Back
how
in
I
the
grew up.
day,
Yeah, it's like you just
day.
don't. You can't just be kicking it with everybody. And it's like, but we were fast friends. Like I felt an immediate kinship with you when I met you. And I remember that being odd to me because I felt like your experience was so different.
Mhm.
But I never questioned your grind or your desire to improve and grow, like personally, not for anybody else's reasonings or anything. And so that's something I think I always gravitate towards people like that because there's a lot that goes with being that kind of person that I think we don't talk about. And discipline is one of them of like you said, it can be, they say different strokes for different folks, but
Mhm.
some people be struggling not to stroke more than others.
Yeah, I agree.
No,
We got some
I'm like,
people. We've seen a couple friends who could
eh.
dibble and dabble, but the dabbling is a little bit more than dibbling.
Man, especially growing up in Portland, of like,
Exactly.
it's just full of people who couldn't get out of Portland
Hmm.
for a lot of those reasons of like a lot of what I think changes the atmosphere in the city from the community perspective is like a lot of people having a lot of potential and talent and not being able to activate enough discipline in
Exactly.
that transitioning period of like, and I think that was a big factor for me growing up of like understanding I refused to stay here and to be here, but understanding like it's not that simple. You know, like the
I'm
last
on.
episode I did was with my uncle is grit. It's like a lot of people got grit, but you got discipline.
Yeah, I think on my side, bro, just like a little bit of background about me. I think from like being from Portland, like my parents, I think raised me with like a lot of just like structure. I've seen my dad work overtime for 40 years. I've seen my mom hold a job and be on time and never be late, right? I have a
Mm.
grandpa who said being on time is being late, right? So I think it's like having that structure and kind of that foundation of people who kind of like instilled that in me, who allowed me to grow and kind of like put my own flavor and my own lid on it. And so to like have like a mixture of like my family, friends, my upbringing in Portland. I also think that like being able to see both sides of Portland, I think like me being an African American in a predominantly white school, private school, but also playing ball with niggas out here in the hood, right? It showed me both sides of Portland and kind of both like meanings of what that word is. It's like some people see it from a school lens or like private school. Others are seeing like every day counts, every minute counts because like I got to make it or like I'm not going to be here. So it's like being able to understand that balance and what that word means for both groups within kind of my age and my circle. I think like also let me kind of build my own meaning of what that word means. So, and like I think from knowing you and your background, I feel like you've kind of like grinded, had like a mixture of struggle and grind as well. And so it's just like bringing other POVs and other kind of insights and perspectives into to your own and kind of building that up with not only you but with like others around you.
Mm.
Yeah,
Beautifully said.
yeah,
And like that's a great pivot point too of to go even deeper with it of because you have that understanding and awareness, how do you feel like that influenced your growth and development from that perspective of like choosing your friends and like the people who stand the test of time versus, there's levels to it of like people you kick it with, you say what's up to, people you hoop with versus people you are, inner circling.
yeah.
Like,
Man, growing up, I mean, obviously I'm blessed, I'm fortunate. I have like people around me, but I dealt with the challenge of like being too black in a white school and then not being black enough. So not to make a joke out of it, but almost like on some Carlton shit, right? It's like
mhm.
he could fit in a group here, but then over here he's like, is he black enough? Can he say it, nigga? Like it's like what's that balance, right? And so I feel like kind of having that realization at a young age and trying to fit in both groups. And I think it was like seventh or eighth grade where I realized like hey, I'm gonna just be me, right? I can't try and mold myself to fit in a certain group. It's like I'm gonna be me. I can fit in both groups. I can make it work. I don't need to have that always code switch on, which also built that awareness of like, who do I look for around me? I want similar people who are in my friend group, not who have dealt with that struggle, but people who also like have that mindset of like, I'm gonna be me 100%, hate it or love it. Here's where I want to go. Here's what I'm doing. And so I think this like as I got older in high school and college, met more people who kind of had that same mindset of being like, no matter what, I'm gonna stay true to who I am, how I was raised, what I believe in, and kind of building a circle based on that kind of love and kind of like sentiment of truly knowing who I am. And I feel like at a certain age, like I say seventh, eighth grade, but nigga, like I didn't know who I was in eighth grade. You know what I'm saying? Like I started to like realize that of like who like I like want to be and who I'm like striving to be.
Yeah. Who
So
feels
yeah,
like me?
who feels like me, right? And so it's like understanding that with like your family, your friends, your teachers, coaches, like even strangers, having those interactions always build up that kind of like elevation of who you want to become. So that's kind of like where I think I started kind of learning that foundation of having some kind of like identity of myself and building that overall awareness of our word today, discipline.
Mm.
So, yeah.
This man over here cooking, Chef
Hey,
Curry
man.
with the pot.
Hey, man,
Oh,
you said
okay.
open up and get deep,
Like,
man. I'm
man, this is
not
my podcast. You better
specifically
relax.
ain't me, but man, you asked me to be on it, so I got to spend a little bit
I'm
of
finna
bars
make you
clean.
the host in a second. No, but I'm like, I love that. It makes it so much easier for me because I'm like, which again, I think that was a part of me asking you of like, now that I'm getting further into this and having an understanding of what I'm trying to do and how I want it to feel, it's when I find myself in a place where I'm like, I want to match this commitment, but I don't know who I can last minute trust to help me execute. It makes a lot of sense when we get on this call and we're already right where I want to be because so much of our relationship is kind of just understood. I feel like even before when we were joking, it's like we don't really, unlike some of the other people I've had on, it's like we don't really get super deep. But I think it's because of our friendship and our relationship of like so much is already intuitively understood
Mhm.
that we don't have to have those conversations. And so it's funny to hear you articulate it and feel the exact same way because it's that like a part of my brain is like, oh man, it's taking the words out of my mouth. But a part of me is like, yeah, that's exactly what I would expect from
Yeah.
somebody who holds this position in my life of like, I think it's a really interesting point that you touch on too about, you can't know these things in the way we know them now from an awareness standpoint when you're young, but
Yeah.
it is what's guiding you. And I
Yeah.
think that's where a lot of value comes from having these kind of conversations in this way of like understanding these things that drive us, whether we're talking about them or not, whether we're aware of them or not, of like what that traces back to
Mhm.
on the backside when it's like, man, we all turning 30 this year of like, and it feels like a long time to us, but it's like, the old heads still laugh in your face because you're
Well,
like,
you
oh,
a
I'm
young
old now.
dude. Yeah.
I'm
You young.
just now
Yeah.
getting old enough to notice inflation. Like that's we really have not been here that long, but it's like all this life experience it takes us to get to this point just to start realizing and becoming aware of all these crucial things that create these versions of ourselves of
Mhm.
like there's so much that just goes outside of hard work, outside of being smart of like I mean and because of like our time at Oregon is like there's so many different types of people and like different scenarios of like it's really not enough. I think I got this quote on my LinkedIn. It's like it's not enough to be smart, to be likable, to be funny. It's like those are which are life changing traits to have. Like it's a super tool. But when you talk about discipline and the necessity to have some degree of it, it's just like you can have everything else, but if you don't have that, I feel like there's just always this gap and
Yeah.
it's that crack that we see people falling through. And I think that's another thing that I think when I thought of you and having this kind of conversation has always been something I never really had, not the space, but I'm like, again, it's like we have a certain type of relationship. I've
Right.
never really had the space to be like, oh man, you have a really interesting kind of discipline. It's like we don't have those kind of conversations. And so when I was thinking about this, I'm like, it was something that was really interesting to me in my mind of like I feel like when I met you and like RJ and like we just started putting together that group of friends, it opened my mind in a lot of ways that I really wasn't looking to open my mind of like I was locked into my definition of discipline and the necessity of it
Mhm.
to a degree that I think was causing so many other issues in me that I was unaware of. Like I was hyper focused
Yeah.
from a place of fear that when I saw, it's like, oh no, you can still be disciplined
Mhm.
and just not be what's the word I want to use? Like not a tight ass, but like wound up. Like I
Yeah.
was, like
Then.
my circumstances
Yeah.
had me
Yep.
super like
What you
I was
needed.
trying to
Yeah.
kill it. Like
Yeah.
I was like, no room for error. And it's like, nah.
I
you
can't
don't
live
have
like
to live
that.
like
I can't
that.
live like
You
that.
can't live like
I
that.
can't live like that.
But again, it's like that sweet spot of balance of like being extreme on any side of anything. The
Mm.
more I live, the more I see what a danger it is. And like you really want to be in the middle, but it's such a hard thing to continually assess and move.
I agree. I think for discipline, bro, I think like a lot of people, what they need to like realize and figure out, like obviously I'm not perfect, no one is, but it's like realizing what that means to you and what you can and can't give. I think like for me, it might be like, hey, I can't go out and party every weekend. For others, it might be like, hey, man, I can't be on the Xbox for 6 hours a day. So it's
Man.
realizing what that, I don't want to say like vice is, but also like realizing what the growth opportunity is in those moments and trying to
Yeah.
focus on like, okay, like I know I need a minute where like I could just chill and not stress or focus on life. Like, what is that thing I can do to like kind of be outside of my like focus lane bubble? Is it going on a hike? Is it going out partying? Is it Xbox? Is it hooping? Is it hanging out with wifey or the homies, right? It's like
Mhm.
realizing that like I can have those moments and still be focused on what my end goal is. And discipline, I feel like some people might see it as like, hey man, like I got the blinders up, I can't see anything else around me. I'm grinding on one goal. And I feel like you can't live life like that because you miss out on so many learning opportunities. I feel like with that word, you need to fail as well. Failure always increases. Learnings, right? Obviously, like, hey, pull me one time, shame on you. Pull me twice, it's on me, right? It's almost like I gotta fail a few times if like I want to learn and be able to grow and figure out where I want to go. And discipline is a huge part of that as well because it's like, what can you and can't you do, man? Like in college, temptations are everywhere, whether it's girls, whether it's parties, whether it's just life be lifing, right? And so it's having those blinders on, but also being able to open them up a little bit and see where it's going. You feel me, right? So just to learn and grow from it. So I feel like talking in circles, but like I feel like that's just kind of the approach I had on it. Yeah, throughout
Yeah,
life.
but see, I'm like, even with that, I love that as another segue of because there's that reminds me of the next piece of it being that, like when we talk about vices, in addition to failure, like you guys always love Kobe, like diehard Kobe fans. Like I ain't never not pretended to be like obviously Kobe's a GOAT. Like it's not a question, but his, the mama mentality brand stems from a lot of his understandings of what it took to reach that level and play in that way. And I think it's a lot of what you're talking about here in terms of the necessity of failure in regards to discipline. There is a hyper discipline that will put you in a place where you cannot sustain it because you become, it's almost like health where you talk about building your immune system. Like there is good bacteria, you have to get sick
Yep.
to build
Facts.
that
Facts.
safety net, because
Mhm.
if you go and you've never been sick, now you dying from the flu, the common flu. Like you're just not. It's funny because we're talking about these similar notions, and it's like all these episodes seem different, but they're really all having the same conversation. And it's like to the person who's half-ass listening, it will sound like we're going in circles, but we're really breaking these things down in a way that I think makes it so much easier to get to that level of depth faster because of our life experience coming together and being able to articulate it in a way a lot of people just can't. They haven't thought about it. Like they don't like educate. Like bro, we highly educated, low
Yep.
key. Like when you think
Mhm.
about it, of like having a lot of experience, not just on paper or in a traditional sense of like school and all that, but like having met a lot of people and been in a lot of different situations, learning, failing, but like having that bounce back factor of like that only comes from having taken risk. Like
Exactly.
risk and failure are not enemies. They are very much allies in the sense of you have to take risks
Mhm.
in order to achieve, but you also have to fail to be able to build grit and your
Exactly.
ability to, minimize the fear that comes with risk. It's an interesting cycle when I think about it in that way of like the more fear you have, the less risk you're willing to take and the less you will fail. But the less you fail, the more you're going to be afraid to take risk. And therefore, the less you will win. It's like you can't hit that big shot if you ain't taking them.
And
And you're
discipline
not
isn't
taking them if
built
you're
off of not
scared.
being fearful and learning from it. It's like
Man,
you can't have that quality if you don't fail and learn from it and try and grow and actually like be a sponge. I think like one thing, bro, on like a point like that is like people see failure as like such a negative thing, which
hmm
I mean, I feel like in our world it seemed like that, but it's like I think it's what you do with it, how you approach it, how you sit back and realize why did I fail? How can I avoid that again from happening? So it's like one thing like I always say in interviews or calls or with peers is like being a sponge. I think absorbing from every interaction, every lesson, every person you've met, every life experience, and taking that with you and trying to mold it into your own. Easier said than done. Obviously, I feel like I'm like reading a quote book right now, but I feel like kind of
it's
living
real.
that and like actually just like trying to like live with that mindset of like what can I take from this person who I see in a positive light, who like I want to strive and be like who like I like see who like I think is a role model. How can I take their positive qualities and form it into my own? And that's a part of failure as well. I feel like having that same outlook and output on it is like failure
hmm
is going to build you into a stronger man, a stronger woman, a better father, a better friend, a better son. What are those moments that create that overall value of you and elevation over time?
Well, absolutely
Yeah.
beautifully said once again of like, and it reminds me again, the shift into um stories where we're exemplifying this. And again, it's like, yes, it's easier said than done, but it's through that experience and that goal. It's
Mhm.
like you just have that direction in mind. Once you set the direction, it's you just fumble your way through it. And
Yeah.
as you fumble your way through it, you're gonna fumble less because practice makes perfect. It made me think about because LZ, like one of our common friends that we went to college with, I just talked to him the other day and we were talking about, we kind of had that friction there for a while, but I think that's what's so interesting when I think about our friend group, especially in regards to these ideas that we're talking about of like how one thing I learned when I was young, my dad used to always say is like pick your friends like your fruit because it like when we talk about these quotes, it's like these are the cheat codes. It's like you may not understand them in the moment, but you keep things like that in your head to give you that leg up. So when you start to fumble, you catch yourself of like, oh, this is what this means. Of like he had called me and we were just chopping it up, and I think we had this moment where it's like we both had a realization of like we're so much more mature now than we were that we could now have a conversation of like, yeah, there was this friction, but it's like we always had that same mutual respect that I was just talking about with you. It's like we had that as well. And
Yeah.
he actually mentioned your name of like having talked to you. And again, it's like there's so many different strong personalities in this group of friends, and yet we are all so morally aligned in a really fascinating way to me of like, and I think that's what makes what your description earlier so resonant for me of like it really is like yes we're not thinking about these things but we all have a certain level of character that I think not only draws us together but allows us to have the space to fail and fumble and like have friction amongst us like it makes for a really interesting group because we're all really committed
Yeah.
to the value of one another as human beings and as people. And so we can grow together because everybody is looking to grow. It's like every friend group's not like that.
Yeah.
And that's where my earlier question really was coming from is because I know you've not just experienced that, but like you have that same understanding of like you're a person who's like even me where I'm like I don't really like with people like I am a very uh I don't know what I call. I
You're a
consider
likable
you
person.
social.
You're a likable person.
Yeah,
People
very
like you being
likable,
around
but you
you,
know,
and
I feel like you're sociable. I
yeah,
don't consider myself sociable, but every time I try to say that, you know, if RJ was on this call, he did all that.
yeah,
It's like
yeah,
because again, he understands my psychology in a different way of like each of us are bringing such a unique experience into this conglomerate that I think we're all just, it's like we've created this almost like a bank where
Mhm.
we're all equally depositing and taking out of and building this wealth.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah, it's just like this wealth of wisdom, I guess, low
Yeah.
key.
And it's wild because like a lot of friends groups don't have that mentality or that kind of like system as like we want to call it because like a lot of friends have like a little friction falling out and then it's done. But it's being like a mature and realizing that we have similar values and we've been through way too much. We have same end goals. We all want to see each other win. So it's like
Man,
serious. It's like brothers, bro. Like always fighting, but like it's not that deep. End of the day, it's not that deep. It's not.
not that deep.
Not that deep,
It
man.
gets deep, but it ain't too deep.
It ain't that deep, man.
And that's the other crazy part too is like again, I think there's a really interesting layer of this conversation about discipline that we can look at from the perspective of individual versus group. When you talk about development, it's like you can really only develop independently to a very limited degree
Yep.
until you need to have that, you know, like it's a weird back and forth. It's like you need time to yourself to always check in with yourself, but you have to constantly be doing that process you referenced earlier of like the sponge got to be around water.
Yep.
In the
Yep.
same way that it degrades it over time and makes it old, it's like that's what makes it valuable. A
It'll be
sponge
the
that's
best
never
sponges.
used,
It'll be the best
man, I'm like
sponges.
the old reliable, like that's all the value is in the sponge because you know what that sponge can do. You know what it's capable of. You done been through some things with the sponge. Like you gotta have a willingness to use what you are developing.
Mhm.
Otherwise, there's no point in developing it.
Yeah.
And I see some people where it's like, you know, and I know you've seen this too, of like people who get so siloed in their understanding of what their value is that I think it's that thing that we talked about earlier. It's like you degrade your discipline so that now, as soon as you're challenged in a way that you don't excel in, you have no bounce back and it destroys you.
Fold. You fold.
You fold or you get packed up
Yep.
at work, man,
Yep, man. You get
corporately.
man, that corporate world ain't no joke, man. That discipline in corporate world is a little different too. A whole different topic, maybe a whole different day, or we could dive into
Man,
it now. But discipline corporate world is definitely a story or a podcast in itself.
it's a different beast altogether.
Different
But
beat.
that's where, like, I feel like for me, the like it was in that stage of it where it's like, you know, we went to a school where it's like they teach us about that a lot ahead of time, but it's different when you're in it. And
Different.
once you're in it, you really understand the different nuance, the different life it takes on depending on the context. Like
Mhm.
corporate becomes its own life. It's like that's your job. You're there for a
More than
big
you are
chunk
at
of
home, more than you
man.
sleep, more than you
A
see
lot of
friends and
times,
family.
like it becomes its own mini like environment or world. Like you have work friends, but they
Yeah,
not your real friends. It's like, but they feel like that at work. Like they, you know
sure.
what I mean?
Exactly.
They're
Exactly.
comrades, but it's a different kind of discipline.
It's a different kind of discipline,
And I
man.
feel like a lot of people don't have the discipline to protect their morals and like their self identity, and their job circumvents that
Yeah.
because of that lack of discipline. It's like if you just now start figuring it, like we were lucky of like you know, like high school, you go through that stage, you figure it out. College is another stage, you figure it out. But you go into the workforce. If you don't start figuring out who you are until you in the workforce,
You're in trouble. You might be in trouble.
might be in trouble, man, because it's
Because
different.
I've seen people who come in like obviously not with the Now with the corporate background experience, and it takes time to adjust and figure out who's who. How do I speak with certain people in certain times? I'm in a meeting with 100 people. I can't just yell and say crazy shit, right? I can't be like, this nigga tripping, right? I gotta have on
He
my
may be tripping,
well,
but you can't
exactly.
yell that.
Almost gotta like have on like a hard hat and being aware of just like, nigga, things are gonna hit you at random times. How do I deal with it? How do I address it? How do I solve it? How do I
Mm,
how do I realize that some people are coming from an ill intent? Some are just like being nice and it's just like how it's shared perceived. So it's
yeah.
just like being in corporate is just like a whole different world of just like a bunch of eggs in one basket and trying to just like mix it up but also stand out. So it's definitely a challenge, man. I've been in corporate now for like shit, 7, 8 years, but I don't got to figure it out because I'm still learning every day. But
A
definitely,
wise man knows he knows nothing.
yeah, each day is definitely like, all right, what kind of bullshit am I getting into today?
Mhm. And
Here
how
we
can
go
I learn
again.
from it?
How can I learn from it? Here we go again. But I'm
Here we
definitely,
go again.
I say I'm definitely blessed to be where I'm at now in life and my job. Like it's a dream job of mine. I'm a big sports fan. I'm a big Warrior fan. So I feel like being an opportunity where I can obviously be a sponge and learn and kind of put on my corporate hat and try and grow and learn every day. But there are some moments, bro, where I'm like, jeez, sheesh. Like, man, if
Gotta
this
whip that
wasn't
discipline out.
Man, if I wasn't in the office right now, I'd say something a little bit different. But let me just
Mhm.
realize where I'm at, time and space, and just realize like, hey, I know the podcast is called Getting Deep, but sometimes it ain't that deep.
Ain't that deep,
It's
man. You
not that
gotta know the levels of your discipline and when is
discipline
the
comes with that.
appropriate level.
Exactly. Discipline comes with that. Knowing when and where I can say something or how I say it, who it's to, how it's perceived. Like, do I have a relationship with this person where I can speak to them like that? And it all comes
Mhm.
back to discipline. It all
Discipline.
comes
Like
back
Fabo said,
to
sometimes saying nothing, saying something.
saying something. It gets the message across loud and clear without even saying something.
And see, that's why I'm like, that was a whole nother layer of discipline. But I'm like, let's go back to the other side in a different direction of when we talk about the process of building it and overcoming that fear, right? So like I wanna shift your mind to not necessarily when we are younger, but times where you hit friction in ways you have not experienced. Do you know what I mean? Of like when we talk about conflict resolution and that kind of discipline of like it's easier to see in corporate, but again, there's so many other layers to it. I think the reason the discipline becomes such an integral thing is because it touches every single aspect of life. And so from the developmental how fear can direct you, how
Mm.
do you feel like you or actually I'll start with where I'm thinking in front of and then see if it triggers something in you. But so basically this is what the conversation has made me think about so far in terms of there was a I can think about several times in my life where I'm like where you have to evolve
Mhm.
where those moments in life where you realize you're not who you thought you was in the way that you were and a lot of people shatter in that space but you can pick those pieces up. That's the good thing about glass, bro, is you can pick that shit up and put it back together
Put that
again.
shit back together.
You can go back together again, but the fear in that shattering
Mhm.
is so real and it's so visceral. I reflect on those times in my life and I'm realizing in this conversation that we're having how much discipline served me in those moments of like being able to have hard conversations with yourself where you let yourself down and you're like trying to decide of like how much am I reevaluating? Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Of
that makes
like
sense.
I'm like there's been so many times in my life where I'm like again, like you said, it's like I know who I am.
Mm,
Sometimes you fuck around, you find out. It's like,
I'm
oh,
in doubt. I'm not really
I
him.
had to I had to find out like when we talk about dabbling, I can't be dabbling over there. Like
Yeah.
everybody else is dabbling over there, but I can't be dabbling
Mm,
over there because I'm going to show up in a way I do not want to show up.
mm,
That part of me is as real and as worthy of respect as the other parts. And I
yeah.
think that's where a lot of people struggle to have that conversation. I think discipline, at least for me, plays a huge role in my ability to have overcome those moments of like and not let it completely shatter or, reinform who I think I am or who I believe myself to be.
I've definitely, speaking on fear, man, I think I've definitely had those moments growing up where like fear has overtaken things that I should have done or things I should have said or like opportunities that if I wasn't fearful, I would do them again. But since we're getting deep, I'm gonna open up. I feel
Yeah.
like one of my biggest fears growing up and still now is I have a stutter, right? So I've come a long way where being able to back in third, fourth grade, bro, I couldn't even say my own name. They'd be like, "Who are you?" I'd be like, oh shit, who am I?" I'm Zach, right? And so now I feel like I've overcome it. Well, not overcome it because like I still do have a minor stutter, but I feel like back in the day, it was like opportunities where whether it was like events or like reading out loud or like speaking in class
Mm.
or like opportunities that like would have helped me grow in a certain moment, I wouldn't do because of that fear of like being in front of a class and missing a word or like saying it 7 times in a row. And on like a flip side of that, I feel like I've had moments where like I'm like, fuck it, I'm gonna do it. And then I get up there reading in class, and it's just the worst experience of my entire life, bro. It's like, why did I raise my hand? Why am I up here? Like, why am I turning red? Why am I stuttering more? Why am I sweaty, right? So I think it's like that failure also motivated me to like also speech therapy class. Like I was in my room reading out loud in like a mirror, right? Me and my mom would sit down and just like talk slowly and realize what like words I would like have a hiccup on. So I think it's being aware of those failures and like man, those things crush me, bro. Like I would go home and cry to her like, why do I have a stutter? Why can't I say my T's? Why am I Bro, popcorn reading in class, I read pages ahead. It's to kind of know in case I was getting called on it, right? Because I
That
don't want to be like Zach, and then I'm like, oh shit, and then just fuck up.
and
So
get
I think those
cooked.
failures like build who you are, and that foundation I keep saying about it's just like realizing like those are gonna make you into a stronger person. And now I'm leading meetings in front of 25 people. I'm meeting with VPs. I'm like talking in front of large crowds. And yes, I still have that fear, but I feel like I've been through certain moments that like allowed me to like realize what causes moments, what I've overcome, and prep for those certain moments. So that is definitely a deep bag I got in, right? A deep bag.
Man, oh
I'm
man,
being
let me
vulnerable with
tell you.
you, but like it's the truth, bro. It's just like realizing what those weaknesses is and what those pain points are and trying to
Yes.
grow and elevate it. And that takes discipline. Because I could have been like, fuck it, I'm a stutter forever. I feel like I still will every now and then. But like in those certain
Nah, this ain't
moments,
come a
yeah,
long way from when I
exactly.
met
A
you.
long way, bro.
Long way.
Bro, one time in high school, it was Spanish class, and the
Mm.
word was Hace calor, which means like hot or some shit. I don't know. I took Spanish for like 8 years. I still can't say I'm Zach, right? Whatever. I was nervous the whole day about getting in front of the class. I told my team like I can't say this word because I just knew it was a trigger word for me. Everyone's like, "That's cat, bro. That's cat. You're fine." I'm up there, Isaac, bro. My turn. I was like, palms is sweaty. Mom's spaghetti. I was over there, spooked, bro. Spooked. I get up there, couldn't say it. Said it like 10 times in a row, like, in that moment, I feel like it's really what just like locked me in. I'm like, all right, if I want to get to where I'm going, I need to address this problem and have enough discipline to realize how can I change it? How can I impact it? Is it classes? Is it speech therapy? Is it speaking out loud more in front of people and facing my fears? Is it doing it in smaller groups first and then bigger groups? It's like, what are those steps that I keep saying, like level one, two, three, four for that end goal? So,
Man,
moment right
so
there.
huge.
Yeah.
So I feel like when I think about
And for
where
all
this
you hate niggas out there, don't laugh at niggas who stutter.
laugh at them, but be friends with them. Be part of the solution, not the
Literally,
problem.
literally.
No, but I love that because, well, for a number of reasons. Of like one, when I think about what this podcast could potentially be, it's like taking things from a theoretical space and connecting them practically, which is it's very much what you just did. And even in that same vein, it makes me think about a lot of why I started this podcast of like, again, you've known me for a long time. And I'm like, when we talk about fear, and I'm like, vulnerability, like being vulnerable in any regard, I'm like, I've always had an issue with that. I'm like,
Me too.
never been toxic masculinity, but for whatever reason, like if somebody was gonna point to it, it would be my ability to be vulnerable. Like I could sit up here, it take many years of therapy to really unpack what it is. But I say that to say of like it's something I started getting disciplined about addressing and exploring and like why I've regardless of why it is, why I've allowed it to continue to be a thing. And when I sat down to structure this out of like I started with a really vulnerable episode to force myself into a position of like we're not just getting deep, we're getting deep in a way that allows for vulnerability so that people can not just see it and I can overcome those fears and those and like execute that discipline and that commitment and all the things that go with that, but give people like us who have not been as blessed as us hopefully an upper leg of like a place of not feeling that isolation that comes with fear. Like I feel like a lot of the danger of fear or the power of it, if you can use it to your advantage, is the paralyzing effect because that isolation compounds with the fear, and
Yep.
you're just like,
Damn.
what is it's like you're it's like a different dimension when that shit hits,
What's
bro.
going on? I'm like in Rick and
You're like,
Morty, like a different universe. I'm like Avengers multiverse. Like, let's
man.
get out of here or let me figure it out.
And it just gets real if you get that habit formed, it controls your entire life. And I've seen it. I'm like, it's broken my heart to see how easily it can develop.
Mhm.
And it's like when we're having this conversation, it just becomes that much more apparent. Not just that we have discipline, but how it developed over a long period of time. And like thinking about, when I think about when I have kids, like how do I teach them to be like me without being fucked up like me? You know what I'm saying? Like I think about this so much of like I don't want my kids to be fucked up in the ways that
Yeah.
I'm fucked up. But I'm like, I definitely have a high self-esteem of like, I don't want to have kids who ain't like me. You know what I'm
Wait on
saying?
that wave. Yeah.
I don't want to. It's such an interesting thing when I think about discipline specifically because it continues to like be a weave. It's almost like shoelaces. It's
Mhm.
like it's all these things. Damn, that's a bar. Shoelaces are a bunch of strands of string tied together, but it really, the way we look at it, it's just one long string,
One long string.
weaving in and out, weaving in and out. But it's like that's thousands of
Man,
strings that
man,
come together just
man.
to tie your shoes.
Just to tie your shoe.
Just to tie your shoes, bro. You ain't even get the big stepping yet. You gotta have your shoes tied before you even try.
Man, baby steps, man.
Baby steps.
Almost. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, but I'm like, I think I feel like we got pretty deep, low key. I'm like,
Yeah, like we
I can't
good.
think of anything else discipline wise that I would say in terms of like at least prevalence. I feel good. How do you feel?
I feel good. I feel like we hit some topics. I feel like we opened up, we chatted.
Drop some nuggets.
Overall, appreciate you having me on here. Definitely good to talk to you and just kind of get a little deeper and open up and just share some knowledge and nuggets with any viewers who are watching this. I'm like definitely happy to hop on again. If it's us two again, a whole different topic, or if it's me, you, and RJ, me, you, and LZ, whoever else wants to hop on, definitely down to
A whole
chat.
savage season like roast me
Then,
off
then,
again.
then eventually I want to be like on some camera animation or on some Jeff Teague
Yeah.
podcast. You feel? I'm trying to be in the studio on set. You feel me? Like
You know what I'm saying, man? I'm trying to get my bag up.
trying to get my
But
bag up every
that
day.
doesn't remind me too of how I've been closing it of like, obviously I can't thank you enough for coming on. And I told you off camera, but on camera as well, of like, especially seeing where we went, it's always a very not just gratifying feeling, but important feeling for me to when I have a gut feeling and I'm able to follow through on it and see why I was having that feeling is always really helpful for me. And I was like, I didn't want to press you, but I did ask you a number of
But
times.
you pressed
But I
me.
also,
You pressed me.
but I knew like you would say no. Like
Yeah.
I can trust you to do that, which is I feel like very much in line with what you were saying earlier of like the things that I appreciate about you and our friendship is that I think for me, I've always been very different, very like, oh, like too deep
Mhm.
to where it's like a lot of people, I have to tone it back and like be so aware of like where other people are at that I'm not able to just be comfortable and be myself.
Yeah.
But you've always been at a level in a different way to where I'm like, I can trust you to be yourself, which allows me to be myself.
I appreciate that. I see the growth as well, so I'll give you a shout out on here and let you know that you come a long way, but
Man,
you still grinding.
got a long way to
Long
go.
way to go, but you come a long way. So the journey never stops.
Journey
Journey
never
never stops.
stops, man.
Yeah,
But we got deep. And
yeah.
with that, it's a wrap.
It's a wrap. Hit that end
Drop that
button.
thing, cuzzo.
Drop that